is continuing to spread at an alarming rate, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear told the Commonwealth today that new restrictions are needed to save lives in the state during what is now the third wave of this rapid spread of the virus. So what does that mean for those of us who live and work in Kentucky? Well, we're joined right now by Courier Journal reporters Grace Schneider, Joe Sanka, and Dahlia Gabor. Hello, thanks for joining us tonight to kind of run us through what this means for all of us who live and work in the state. So Grace, let's start with you. In case people missed what the governor had to say, can you kind of run through those restrictions?
Sure. The governor's orders really touch a lot of people's lives. Parents, grandparents, teachers, restaurant owners, bars, just regular consumers around the state. It doesn't really impact retail establishments, but just to run through them, first and foremost, and really touching a lot of people's households, is all public and private K through 12 schools will close to in-person instruction starting Monday through the end of the semester. The only exception is for elementary schools in counties outside the red zone, which is not very many these days. And they may reopen on December 7th if the schools follow all the guidelines. Another big one beginning Friday and lasting until December 13th, all restaurants and bars will close to indoor dining services. Outdoor dining is still allowed, but the governor made a point of saying on this afternoon during his briefing that these establishments are still going to have to stick to a lot of guidelines about distancing people and no more than, no more than two households seated at a table. He basically said it defeats the purpose to have a whole bunch of people from different households gathered around a table, unmasked, eating, drinking, etc. So there will be more restrictions on that. Attendance at weddings and funerals is limited to 25 people. Gyms are limited to 33% capacity. And there'll be no group classes or indoor games allowed at facilities like that. Also, big one for Thanksgiving, indoor gatherings should be limited to 2 families, not exceeding a total of 8 people. So the other big one on the list was, as far as announcements from the governor, was a $40 million fund, food and beverage fund to help businesses. Mainly, it sounds like independent, locally owned businesses that will be deeply impacted by this. They'll be eligible for up to $10,000 in assistance. And if they have multiple locations, they are eligible for a maximum of $20,000. So that's something, but basically the governor admitted that this is going to be tough on everybody, and we just need to hang in there and get on top of this virus.
Did he talk any more about how they would enforce these different restrictions? I think it would be very difficult to do that in someone's personal home, but in the restaurants and the bars, and also maybe in these gyms. I know you mentioned something about cheerleading gyms and martial arts gyms had been targeted as kind of areas where a lot of the virus was spreading with these big group classes.
There were a few questions, and maybe my colleagues can chime in on this. There were a few questions about how he's going to enforce this, especially, obviously, in-home gatherings. I mean, who's to know how many people you're really having over? I don't recall him addressing very specifically other ways that they're going to step up enforcement. Of course, in Louisville already, last week, the health inspectors announced that they would be out doing more undercover surveillance for adherence to all the guidance. And apparently, according to Greg Fisher, the mayor in Louisville, they will continue to be in lockstep with the governor's orders. And I assume that the health inspectors will be out surveilling for these violations, under these new orders.
Well, we're coming right, what are we about? Oh, a week and a day from Thanksgiving. And I know that not everyone planned on making a Thanksgiving dinner and eating it in their own homes. Dahlia, restaurants, some of them at least, were gearing up to have customers come in and enjoy their Thanksgiving dinner there. Have you had a chance to talk to any of the restaurant owners at this point? I know the governor just spoke at 4 o'clock, so we're only about 2.5 hours out of that. But what are you hearing?
How to put it? They're scared. They're scared about what this means for their businesses when they've already tried everything that they can think of to be safe, to operate safely, to keep their employees paid, keep their employees fed. I did talk to a few, and I'm going to be talking to more tomorrow to kind of expand upon, after everybody slept, what this means. I did speak with Anush Shariat at Anush Bistro and Noosh Nosh, a longstanding Louisville restaurateur. And so he's got the 2 restaurants, but he said the $10,000 from that grant that the governor proposed, that barely covers payroll for 1 restaurant for 1 week.
So the good news was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Grace and Joe, on this, but the governor did say that if you have more than 1 establishment, it could be $10,000 for each establishment. So he ultimately could get 20, but I guess
it's still really tight because it's 3 weeks. It's essentially, when it comes to a restaurant, that's a month with no income because of how much it's going to cut. So they're very worried, and they're also worried because it's getting colder and less people are eating outdoors anyway. So they essentially lost both revenue streams and are increasingly depending on takeout.
So from a consumer standpoint, consumers can still go and get curbside. Restaurants can serve all the curbside that they want.
Yes.
And that goes for Thanksgiving dinners as well.
Absolutely. I'm sure they're going to be pushing it even more now. The restaurants that have been buying all this food to cook for you, they still want to cook for you. So you can absolutely get takeout and curbside pickup from your favorite restaurants, almost all of which will absolutely need your help in the coming weeks.
Yeah. And again, that's always a good thing to think about. Which restaurants do you really want to help and promote? Those are the ones you go to night after night to get your curbside safe meal. Joe Sonka, you asked the governor about collegiate basketball and the restrictions at the Yum Center and Rupp Arena. What did he tell you about that?
He said that it should not be affected, at least the orders that he's enacting today. They'll still have a 15% attendance limit, but whereas high school sports have been affected, it looks like collegiate sports for the time being, you can fill 15% of Rupp Arena or the Yum Center in Louisville. So it looks like for at least the time being, they're getting a pass that a lot of others did not.
It sounded a little bit when I was listening to him that he was saying that it's because collegiate sports have a greater financial base to be able to do testing and more safe protocols than maybe a high school would.
That works for the players, but you have to think about thousands of fans cramming into an indoor arena, which for the time being, these orders aren't going to affect. So you can control the players much better than high school sports can, but it's still a question of the fans together.
Sure. So any idea, there are those who are going to be very upset about these restrictions, and then others who think this announcement has come too late. What's kind of the thinking on how he decided to lay out these restrictions here on Wednesday, November the 18th?
Well, it seems like this has been coming for a long time. There was the Supreme Court decision last week, which basically said that Beshear did have the power to enact all of the COVID-19 restrictions that he had before relating to masks and restaurants and bars and other businesses. And we've been seeing week after week of record number of cases, record number of hospitalizations, record number of deaths. So on Monday, the governor said that, well, we might be doing this by Wednesday if things don't turn around. It seemed clear to everyone that it wasn't going to turn around by Wednesday. So he said yesterday that he was going to do it, and he waited another 24 hours. Many people thought that extra 24 hours of waiting was that he would bring in stakeholders and collaborate on some kind of joint agreement on his orders. Looks like that did not happen. He spoke to the Kentucky League of Cities and Kentucky Association of Counties, local government groups this morning, but he did not reveal what he was going to do later in the afternoon. He also spoke with legislators, I believe just an hour before his briefing, and finally told them what he was going to do, and took less than 10 minutes of questioning, according to some of those legislators. And the Republican leaders of the House and the Senate were very upset by that. They said it was the first time he had briefed them in advance on what his orders were going to be, but said it was not a collaborative process at all. And House Speaker David Osborne and Republican Senate President Robert Stivers both said that this was not a collaboration at all. He was just telling them what he was going to do. And they also questioned whether the orders that he was doing, the actions he was taking, were based on data, restaurants not being safe, based on data of in-person school classes being safe. So they've always been critical and skeptical of whether Beshear's orders are correct, and they've criticized them, and the Republican officials have sued him. But now they're saying that this new process is still not collaborative, and they still appear to have lots of problems with it.
Well, so he mentioned in his news conference where he had gotten the information that he based this on, though.
Yeah, they've cited the CDC. They've cited the Public Health Department. What Republicans are saying is they want specific contact tracing data to prove that in-person school can spread the disease, that in-person dining can spread the disease. So they say they're looking for specific contact tracing data within Kentucky to prove it. Even though on the national level you have medical groups, you have the CDC that have been saying this for a long time, that indoor dining and lack of social distancing inside can spread COVID-19. All while Kentucky is seeing record numbers of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths.
Well, may I throw something in there? Yeah. Following up on Joe's comment, I sit in regularly on the COVID update that the Mayor Fisher and Moyer do, and they routinely display what the contact tracing data that they're getting in Louisville, which obviously it's one of the places with the biggest number of cases. Mm-hmm. And they mentioned restaurants, they mentioned bars, they mentioned weddings and social gatherings, and each one has sort of an associated number from recent cases. So this is being documented in Louisville, and I can't say off the top of my head exactly, what level restaurants have in comparison to bars, in comparison to weddings and funerals, which Governor Beshear mentioned today, but they definitely are documenting this. And they are also documenting in-home gatherings. And so that seems to be the reason why Stack and Governor Beshear are, wanting to limit those interactions as well. I got a call from an 85-year-old man just recently, and he said he had COVID, and he had hugged his grandson during a gathering at a family member's home. The grandson got back with him a couple days later and said, "I have COVID. You better get tested, Grandpa." He went and got tested. He has it. At the time that he told me this, he was feeling okay, but he said, "I have a bad heart, and I just hope this thing doesn't progress." I don't know how the gentleman's doing, but at 85, that seems like a massive risk. So, yeah. For what it's worth.
Well, so the restrictions that the governor talked about today are to be held on to through December the 20th? Am I right about that? Is that the 3-week mark? Or can you extend that?
It's December 13th, Kirby.
December 13th, thank you. Yes, so they start the 20th of November.
Yeah, right. They start Friday at 5 p.m. and they go until December 13th at midnight. So they will be lifted on the 14th.
All right. All right. Well, thanks for kind of hashing all that out for us. I know as the governor wrapped up his announcement today, he said that this is not us being unfair. This is the virus being unfair, and that we all need to do our part to get through this safely, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel because of the vaccines that are being proven to be effective right now. So with that said, I know we'll be watching again tomorrow at 4 o'clock, and you can read much more about this in Courier Journal in print and also online at courierjournal.com. Thanks to Grace, Joe, and Dahlia. I'm Kirby Adams. Thanks for joining us here at courierjournal.com.